Hello everyone, welcome to Experts Talks. Just to quick intro, myself Prashant. I'm a backend developer. I play different roles, including like front end, backend, DevOps, testing, all different types of roles. I've been with Eve almost eight years, few months right now, and being in the industry for almost 16 years. So yeah, that's about myself. Yeah, once again, welcome to Expert Talks. I think this is something which we are doing it for the first time after 3 years, I think, 3 to 4 years now. But yeah, hopefully we'll see these faces again and again in coming months with more amazing topics, more talks, and hopefully some of you folks can actually stand here and then present for us as well for sharing the knowledge what you guys also have. So yeah, with that, let's jump into it. So today I'm going to talk about visual architecture, diagram as a code. So this is something which I personally, experienced, and something which I really liked, and we try to do it everywhere we are part of. So that is, it's kind of a story which I went through, and how we found out all those things, how I got exposure into this, and it's kind of a personal story on that front. So I'm gonna talk about that. So we'll talk about the difference of, like, okay, what is a traditional diagramming tools, what you might have many before that, going into that, how many of you are developers over here? Okay, most of us are developers. So you might have seen architecture diagrams in your organizations and many tools which has been used to create those diagrams as well. So we are going to talk about a little bit about that, challenges in the usual traditional diagramming and architectures. So, and then I'm going to introduce something new. I don't know how many of you have heard about it, C4 model. It's a way of architecting something, your systems. So I'm going to introduce that to you folks, and then from that we will go into the code driven diagramming, right? Like, so how you can actually code a diagram. And of course I'm going to introduce few tools. So it's going to be like kind of a, okay, you will hear a lot of names over there. So the idea was basically to give you kind of exposure into different tools which you can use it. And then we are going to do a demo, hopefully will go well. So the demo is going to be one tool which I really liked, and maybe it is different from what anyone actually did this, like coders, coding diagrams in your organizations. Cool. So maybe it's some new tool, hopefully. So you will see and I will explain what are the reasons why I liked it. And I feel like, okay, this is something, architecture diagram is a field where we are a little bit behind the software cycles, right? Like everywhere innovations are happening. Diagramming is not that something which is happening that often, but it might be just because people are not aware of the tools out there. So I'm trying to introduce a new tool to you folks so that you can take it back to your projects and then use it and create much more better diagrams for people who are going to come into your organizations and your projects, right? So let's do, just to recap, why architecture diagrams, why visual architecture diagrams are really important. It's like, it's basically to give a clarity of the systems which we are working on, right? Like, so when someone new or someone new is coming into your project, or you want to see how the systems works, it is easy to see a diagram and understand the systems rather than going through the docs a lot, right, or reading through a lot of text. It is much more easier for you to get a clarity around the systems by looking into a picture. And also it helps you to talk to like non-technical stakeholders, right? Like, so when someone who is actually doesn't understand much about the technology side of things, by diagrams you can actually give more inputs, more informations about the systems to those kind of peoples as well. And by doing so, by creating this system architecture, you are actually leaving a legacy for more people to come in and being in the maintenance phase and all those things, right? Like, so when a project starts, like, you all know that, okay, we have a really good architecture and all those things, you code, you created the amazing applications, and then it goes into a multi-year maintenance mode. So any point in time some issues happens, where is it is happening, and what is actually, which all systems are affected, any of those things, you will get more easy informations by just looking at a picture. So that is the reason why visual architecture diagrams are really important. I would say, like, it's one of the best out there, like having some diagrams over there which explains your systems, right? Not just the few of text or code. it is much more easier to look into the diagram and understand the systems. Usually, traditionally the tools which most of you might have heard about are like draw.io, right, Visio. All those tools are the ones which actually we uses to create this system architecture diagrams. So when you do this, personally, like, okay, you go to a new project, right, like you have this diagram over there, you go and try to understand the diagram very well, and you have a doubt, right, like, and you go to your senior person and it's like, okay, I saw this diagram, I have a doubt, what about this? And that person is telling you that, okay, hey, by the way, that diagram is outdated, our system is actually moved on from what it is there. And this is a common practices and common thing which happens in every day, right, like wherever. It's the most frustrating thing to happen, because you put a lot of effort to understanding that diagram, what is there and all those things, and then you are told that, okay, hey, someone forgot to update this particular diagram. No, don't look at this one, there is another diagram out there, please take a look at that. So this is a most biggest problem in the traditional diagramming tool, because like maintaining that consistency across the diagrams and also keeping up to date is always difficult. I don't know like how many of you have tried to do it, like you go to draw.io, you have already you have a link to that, which the diagrams opens up, you change one line, then suddenly all the layouts are broken. You don't know how to change it into the back, you revert it back, then you try to add one more box, you don't know where to fit in, right? So these are the common problems which happens, and we spend a lot of time, right, in doing so, like creating the diagram and maintaining it. And also one of the other biggest pain point which I have seen in personally is that, okay, if I am actually updating a diagram on a page, right, like someone else can't do that, right? It is on my name, like I am the owner of it, so I did it. If I forgot to change the ownership from my name to someone else, I left the company, that's it, gone. There are a lot of orphan diagrams out there in the current companies, right? Like a lot of that kind of orphan diagrams are there. So the collaboration features of the traditional diagramming tools are very, very limited. And also it is like, when we talk a lot about test-driven development, continuous iteration, continuous development, continuous deliveries, a lot of things, we talk about a lot of things like that. But how many of these tools are actually integrated with your own day-to-day development tool sets, right? So many of the things it do have it, like say for example, like GitHub actually README actually can render diagrams for you folks, right? It has actually come a long way, but it's still, it is long from like, you will see how it is easy to integrate into a diagram as a code, but there are so much of gap which used to happen in previously, but now at least some of these GitHub, GitLab, all these people actually try to. Confluence, for example, actually shows that like, okay, hey, you can give a link to draw.io or whatever it is, and it will render the page diagram over there. So even though it comes a long way from the old days, but still it is that development environment iteration is not up to the mark, like some other things, right? So that is where that is where the pain came from, right? Like, so it was few years back where you go to any projects, this is a common pattern which you will see, like a diagram is outdated, and you can't actually, usually you go into very minute pictures, maybe there is a sequence diagram which talks about system A and system B, but not on overall systems. So and then there will be like, okay, 5-6 different pictures, which is diagrams which is sitting in one page, different multiple confluence pages. And what happens is that, okay, you can't really bring the context together. So that is where C4 model actually comes into picture, right? So C4 model is it's architectural model which is developed by a person named Simon Brown. So he introduced this concept very, I think, some years back. So his point was also same, right? Like the diagram should tell you a story. The moment you are telling a story via diagrams, it is much more easier to understand. So he was actually in this mindset, like, okay, hey, diagram should read or talk like a map. So for example, if someone is asking you, hey, where is expert talks happening? If that person is from outside India, if you tell that, okay, hey, this is happening in MG Road, no one is going to understand that, right? So most probably if you're talking to someone outside this area, and maybe not even from Bangalore. So you will say that, okay, hey, it is happening in South India, right? You start from there. Okay, that person knows, okay, where in South India, right? That the moment you actually ask questions like that, you will go deep into your system. So he wants this system diagrams to tell this kind of story, right? We start with a very high level, which says that, okay, you will set the context in, hey, there is an expert talks happening in South India. Where in South India? It's in Bangalore. So now you are going in deep into that, right? Like from there, it's actually like, where in Bangalore? Now I have a context of, okay, it is happening in South India, it is in Karnataka state, it is in Bangalore, it's in MG Road uh, in Bangalore. So where in MG Road? So you are digging deep into the systems. So the C4 model also tried to help you to navigate this architecture diagram by defining this different levels of abstractions. So there are 4 levels of abstraction for C4 model. One is actually the system context, where you will say that the context of the software systems, and then you have something called as containers. Containers, don't think like, okay, it's a Docker container, because C4 model actually came first before even Docker introduced into it. So he used that container word over there. So container is like, you can think of as a system which a team actually take care of it, right? Like, okay, you can actually have a team boundary over there. So say for example, one of the example which we are going to do is like I will show some tools which I try to use as an e-com website, right? So in an e-com website, if you think about it, like order management systems, right? A team is actually managing the entire order system. So that is the container side of things. It's not deployed thing, right? Like say for example, okay, order service as a microservice, it's not that. It is that system boundary of it, right? So you will talk about e-com as a system. You will say that, okay, hey, we have an e-com website. So that is the setting, the context of it. Then you are going deep into it. Okay, e-com website has a product pages where you will see the information about the product. So you go into that product container, right? And then you have the basket. You will manage the basket wish list and stuff like that. And then you have the order, so where you are managing the order. So you are digging deep, one step going into the system. So that is what containers means. From the containers, then it goes to the next abstraction, which is called as components. So for example, order, let's take this order system itself. Very simple manner, there is a UI for it and there is a backend system for it. So there are 2 components over there. Okay, there is a front-end component and a backend component for it, right? So you go in more deep into it. Then the 4th is the final one, which is actually the code. So the code is actually literally you are going to talk about the code in that. So that is the lowest level you can go. So now once you get this understanding, once you actually represent your systems like using the C4 model, now say for example, you're talking to a completely outside person, right? Like you can easily go and just talk about the system context, and you will see these blocks over there, how the users are interacting with the systems, right? So you will talk in that level. But then you are going in deep into it. Okay, yeah, I can go in little bit more deeper. So based on the audience, you can go to whichever level you want to be. There's some person who is actually joining your team. Maybe you will go till the code levels to show them, okay, exactly how the system works, right? So usually, but in C4 model these days, code level diagrams are very less created. So usually there will be almost 3 levels. So 3 levels of abstractions, and then people talk still the component level, not to the code level, because code anyways can read it. Being a techie person, you can read it in the IntelliJ or this tool sets, which is quite easy, will create those diagrams as well for you. So this is C4 model. So why I'm giving you this C4 model is that actually revolutionized the ways of thinking about an architecture diagram. So from that point onwards, then people started thinking about how we can actually represent this, right? It is, even if it actually takes away a lot of problems where you don't know the context of it. So now we are talking about having a tool which actually can talk about different contexts in a single diagram. So you can actually dig deep into different levels as like, right? So what happens is like now over there, he also introduced something called as code-driven diagramming. So he introduced a tool called Structurizr, which is a DSL. We'll talk about that in a bit. So that is where the code-driven diagramming kick-started many of the things, right? Like, so the Structurizr came into picture. Before that, there are sequencing diagramming tools out there, but there were just little bit sequencing and stuff like that. Now we are talking more about system architecture, right? So that is where it actually started. And then, of course, the benefits you all know, because the moment you are actually touching the code, you can put it in a version control. You know exactly what is the system updates are happening. Now it is inside the code base, right? So you can actually integrate it into your CI/CD pipelines, all those things. Now, because it's in the CI/CD, you will get this collaboration as well, right? Like, because I can update the code, someone else can update the code, the same code, then they let the tool take care of the merging these two things, right? So even if you want to do that, you can actually do that. So these are some of the benefits of the code-driven diagramming. You can see on the right side there is some code which is written. Ignore that code, but you can see that diagram which comes out of that particular code. So many of the diagramming tools we are talking about today is actually like it actually gives you some benefits here and there, and it also is really good for one specific use cases, right? So we will touch upon some of the use cases which is really useful for, really good for it, and then we will end the talk with another tool which I feel like it is gonna change the way how we are seeing the diagrams and how so far we are seeing the diagrams. So yeah, so these are the benefits of the code-driven diagramming. So now let's, as the context is set on the code-driven diagramming, I hope you understand the values which is going to bring in. We are going to talk about the different tools which you can use it to create code diagrams using the code. When I say code, you have different options for it. Sometimes it is a DSL, so it has its own ways of representing things, its own ways of writing things. But then some other the common programming languages like Python or something. Using Python, you can actually create diagrams by using diagrams. Sorry, using Python, we can actually create the diagrams. So the first tool many of you might have heard about is PlantUML. So I hope everyone knows about PlantUML. So PlantUML is very useful for the sequence diagram. Many of the sequence diagram now you might see in your projects most probably would have started with the PlantUML. So even though the tools have a different styles of DSL, but the concepts are always same. Like if you think about how this actually creates is like yeah, you have an actor, right? And then you will say that hey, somehow you need to create relationship between different actors, right? So and then you create these steps. So you can see that this is a very crudely put together. So please don't look at the architecture side of things and this ones. It will not be that great. But I just wanted to show you folks what it is capable by using PlantUML. So the right side what you can see is that the diagram which is created from the code which is written on the exactly like how it is in the left side. So this is the rendered version of it and the code which is written for this. So here the one of the best thing over here is that now these diagrams are generated from this code. So now you can actually create you have a microservices. So it is not on the even here we are not talking about the very high level system architecture over there level, but at least on the lower level component level you can actually now talk about how the user sequencing request sequencing is happening. So PlantUML is one of those tools which is quite useful for it, for sequence diagramming and all those things. And of course, it will help you to basically to integrate with this into your pipeline. So basically, you have a microservice where it is in your CI/CD pipeline, you can run one extra step to create this diagram out of the this particular code block. So which will create a PNG or JPEG, and then you publish this as an artifact. So now onwards, anytime your code changes, you can actually look at hey, whether the UML is also changed or not. If it is not changed, you can actually make the changes. If there is a change in the sequence, you change it. Immediately, the next build itself will generate the new image file, which is then being used in your Confluence pages. So you will always get the up-to-date diagrams, right? So this is one of those tools. The next one which I want to touch upon is Mermaid. So Mermaid actually took like PlantUML, if you see, that is very not eye-catching. There are many, like it's not that what is it like in modern era, like when you have like amazing web UI and all those things, it doesn't look that modern, right? PlantUML looks very like kind of old applications like that. So Mermaid took that and a little bit more sassiness. It added a little bit more sassiness into it. And it also supports different types of diagrams as well. Like sequence diagram is one of them, right? Like and journeys, you can actually create journeys out of it. So you can actually say that, hey, this is how the user journey is happening. So it's again, it is very similar. If you see the syntax, you may not see a difference between the PlantUML and Mermaid, right? It is very similar to it. You define an actor, then you have this different different steps, how you are actually doing it. So this is the advantage of Mermaid. And one more thing Mermaid actually does is that even in PlantUML, you can actually use some of the CSS and stuff like that. Styles, you can actually add it into your diagrams to create a little bit more interactive diagrams. Say, for example, if I have an alternative journey into my sequence diagram, this actually gives an opportunity to create that and then color it differently so that it is visually appealing to users who are actually using this diagram, and can actually say that, okay, hey, there is an alternative journey in this particular one, right? So again, going back into the C4 context, again, this is actually still, we are into this container. We are not getting into these tools when I was talking about PlantUML or Mermaid. Even though they can actually create C4 diagrams, it's still not a single diagram. It is actually, you have a one file like this, it generates the diagram from it, but there is no interaction between the diagrams, right? Like from different levels. So that is where the before going to the next one, that there is one more tool which I want to introduce is diagrams, which is the Python based, right? Still now, like the Mermaid or PlantUML, it has its own DSL. So Python is basically, diagrams is actually using the Python as a instead of its own DSL. So yes.
So there's one website called diagrams.net.
Yeah.
That is different than diagrams.
I have the reference. I don't know whether it is .net or not, but it is actually.
That is not Python. That is just.
So then most probably it is a little different. So we have a reference for that. I don't remember exactly the.
Huh? That's draw.io on web. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is not. That is not here.
Yeah. So this is specifically on the using Python itself. You can actually write the code, and then you can generate this diagrams. The only thing about the diagrams is like it is more towards the like cloud infrastructure. So it is much more easier to show the deployment diagrams rather than the system context of it. So it will give you this easy tools. Like you can see that the tools which is here, like, right, okay, whether it is GCP, AWS, whatever, the Azure or whatever it is much more easier for you to create that deployment diagrams rather than the system context levels to it. But you can use the Python library itself to do the coding, right? Like rather than learning a new thing. If you are already familiar with Python, this is something which you can actually prototype your system architecture in a very high level, right? So this is where diagrams comes in. Till now, the tools which we talked about is, again, it's a like some code is there, some diagrams are there, right? Still, the C4 model is not in place where you have this context setting and stuff like that. That is where this tool comes in. So the right side, it's a GIF file. So you can see that, okay, this is the code which is written over there. With that code, we have created this diagram over there. You can see that, okay, hey, I have a web application. I am actually zooming into that web application, right? Like, and then suddenly, okay, there is a checkout, there is a basket, product listing page, product details systems.
This is the ones Simon.
Yes, exactly. So this is the Structurizr. The tool called is Structurizr, and they have its own DSL for that. And this will generate this diagram over there, right side, right? So then you can actually, now you have an interactive diagram, right? Like, so now you can actually define your system context. So from system context, you can actually say that, like, hey, okay, let's dig deep into the container levels, right? Like, so they go into the container. Like, I can actually dig deep. Like, I only created 2 levels right now, but then the concept is same. Like, now the container to the component, you can actually create more. So this actually helps you to create an interactive diagram, which actually talks about the entire system architectures, right? So now coming into this tool, but still, if you see, this is where I really love the concept of C4, right? Personally, I think that is the right way to create a system architecture. But for my liking, this diagram still looks very old. It's not modern, right? Like it's interactive, but then still, okay, yeah, where is it? Like there is the moment you want to go away from the defaults of structured DSL, it gets more and more tricky, right? Because say for example, I want to create a different colors or something like that, right? Like, so the moment you actually put styles into it, right? Like, okay, you want to create a much more beautiful diagrams to it, right? So it gets more and more tricky. And the other thing which I find it difficult in Structurizr was that, okay, integrating with the existing tool systems, right? Like, say maybe you have I don't know, like you already have your own backstage or something like that where the documentations and all are put in, right? So how you are going to integrate into that one, right? It is more and more the existing tool system, we need to work with whatever the tools which we are using, it needs to work easily with the existing tool systems. So that is where I want to introduce you folks to like C4. This is the tool which I want to go into in deep, and we are going to do a quick demo of this as well. And this will give us whatever we discussed about so far in an architecture world, like, okay, hey, C4 model, if I want to represent C4 model, of course you can do it. Sequence diagram, it's a different take on sequence diagram. We will discuss about a little bit about that as well, right? And this, why it is really good is because it is actually React based. So now React comes into picture, right? So the moment you have React, now it is in your control. They have a lot of control over there, where if you want to play around with it, you can, because it's an open source as well. So the moment you have the React into it, you can actually embed it into the existing websites. You need a static web page, you can actually create it from the static website, right? Like I said, create a static website, then host it into your own ecosystems, whatever it is. And it also supports some other main things which I was after, which is our CI/CD automations, right? Like it should generate it from our pipelines, right? So we can actually create a pipeline for itself and then generate it from there. It can actually be a part of, like, it also give you by default GitHub Actions if you are into GitHub pipelines. It also provides you an actions, GitHub Actions, predefined actions, which you can simply create this diagrams out of it. And then it also creates different formats. So it supports wild varieties of formats like a PNG, JPEG, and all those things you can export into it. You really don't need to export it into images. You can put it inside in a web page itself, and then you have this reactive diagrams which is coming into it. And one of the best thing about this was that the integration with our existing ecosystem, dev ecosystem. They have a plugin for Visual Studio, so we can actually see how the diagrams comes through, right? So what we are going to do is, like, we are going to go in a little bit deep and try to create a diagram together, right? Like, we are going to architect a flight booking system, right, today. So using like C4, right? So this is where hopefully demo is going to work. We are going to take, cool. All right. Okay, so this is a fresh repo. You can see that, okay, I've created as a repo over here. The only thing which you need to do is that, okay, if you need to use like C4 in your app, this one, there is a plugin which is available in Visual Studio Code, right? You can add this plugin into your Visual Studio Code, and then now onwards you can actually get the auto completion of these things. This is a absolutely important point for my, like, when I was actually evaluating different tools, this is one of the things as well, like auto completions, right? It actually eases up your dev time as well, because it like, if something is going wrong, we immediately knows about it rather than rendering it and then finding out, okay, hey, it is not working. So you just need to add this plugin. The moment you add the plugin, you can see that, okay, highlights are happening over here. So what I have done is that, okay, I'm first defining what all systems are there, like to set the system context, what all elements are there in my system. So of course, mine is a flight booking system. I need to have a user. So I defined a user, right? So the specification is actually nothing but definitions of your systems, right? Okay, who all are parties in this particular system. So I have, like, okay, I created user as a element, and then our three main C4 components, like abstractions, system, containers, and components. And of course, most probably there will be a DB, so I'm gonna create a database as well, right? So it is up to us to decide what all things you need to have it. C4, even though we are trying to create a C4 diagram, like C4 doesn't restrict you to one specific notion, right? Like, you can take it and you can actually create it by whatever what definitions you want, you can actually create it. So they don't, even though they support it, they don't restrict you from these kind of like, what is, like, extra things which if you want to add to it. So now in like C4, there are three main blocks. We are going to talk about these 3 main blocks, but it does support others like deployments and stuff like that. We'll maybe if we get time, maybe we will discuss about that a little bit. But it has actually something called a specification, then model and views. So specification is the specification of the systems, who are the parties which is going to take part in this our system. And the model is where the relationship between these parties, how their relationships happens and all those things. And views is like, okay, how to view this diagrams. So we are going to come to that. So what I'm actually put in, like I have as the time constraint, so I have actually put some already coded about it. Let's discuss about it and then we will code more on it, right? Like it's a customer is a user, and I am actually giving a description. So now this is another important thing. The good diagram should be able to explain it by itself, right? Rather than if there is a diagram and you need to see it and then you need to go somewhere else and read the entire document about what does this mean, that actually doesn't give the really good developer experience. So diagrams should be able to explain the what it's actually trying to tell you. So that is why this actually has something called as description, so you can actually see the descriptions and all those things. And I have the flight booking system. So this is my main system, right? Like user comes to, right? User comes to the flight booking system to book a flight, right? So what I have done is, I have created the system. I have said that, okay, hey, this is the system which supports the flight booking.
Run it now and what it shows, right?
Yeah. Right now it doesn't. Yeah, like.
So is it well formed C4 already or no?
It is not. Right now you can't see anything because we are just defining the systems and how the relationships works. We are gonna create the view. So the moment you create the view, then is when you are actually gonna see it. So let's tag, like we have created 2 models, which is customer, flight booking system. There are 2 things, 2 entities are there. One is the user and there is a system, right? So there is no relationship or anything. Let's see how this is gonna view, right? Like. So now I'm trying to tell that, okay, hey, my base view, this is how the base view is gonna look like. So open preview, this is how it is gonna look like, right? So there are 2 actors over there. There is nothing over there. There is nothing, no relationship between these systems. Doesn't talks anything about it. The only thing it talks about is like a description. You can see that, okay, description is the person who wants to book a flight. Flight booking system which supports the flight booking. So it just gave the context of who are these actors are. Now let's go a little bit deeper, right? Like say for example.
Description of the entire thing so that on bottom left something will come. Right now it is not description.
Like it is up to us to how to do it. So
where do you add it? Where is
so
the syntax? Okay, in view we can add.
So everywhere you can actually add it. Like system booking, like okay, whether you want to do it descriptions or anything about it. So even like say for example, I will show you like how you can actually add in different sites as well. But yes, it is providing all those things over there, right? So now let's create a relationship between these 2 systems. So of course, user needs to use the flight booking system to do something, right? To book the flights. So let's say that, okay, sorry, okay. All right. So sorry, 1 second. Maybe I don't do this one. Right. So what I have done is right now is that, okay, I have created a relationship between the customer, which is the user component, and I have added a relationship between the customer to the flight booking system. So now you can see that, okay, hey, over here you can see that, okay, this guy comes to this flight booking system to book a flight, right? So let's do something like, okay, you might have already seen that, okay, there is a style which I've added it. So this is a way how you can actually change the colors and shapes of the systems and stuff like that. So it is actually, the secondary is nothing but they have given some default values, like, okay, usually the blue, if you don't put any styles to it, it will come as like this blue, right? Like the blue which is there for the customer. So secondary is a very light shade of it. So I can actually put as red, and suddenly the color of it actually changes. So now let's say there is a style for it. And let's say like, okay, person, right? Like, okay, you need to quickly identify. If there are so many boxes over there, you can't read it and each and everything over there. So let's create a persona kind of a thing for that. So I create a person shape over there. So now you can see it in the customer, there is a person shape which came over there, right? So it is quite easy to create this kind of custom look and feel of these things. Now we are actually saying that, okay, hey, there is a flight booking system. All right, this is the system context. Now I want to know what are we doing inside the flight booking system, right? So let's create some more things over there. Let's say there is a home page. For, of course, any system will have a home page. Let's say this is a component of our system, right? Like, sorry, this is a container of our system. So I am actually trying to tell our model like which specification it is. So it is a container. So now home page is a container. Let's say like, okay, let's add some description. Right? Let's say this is a like we don't host it. Usually the home pages, which is a static web page, but let's say that, okay, we are actually using Adobe AEM Experience Manager to do it, right? So let's add some technology into it so that it will have more information about how it has been printed over there, or how it has been how we are actually creating this containers or the systems. So now let's say the actually user comes to the home page. User doesn't know about the big system or other things, right? So let's move this. Customer doesn't comes to the system, but it actually comes to the home page, right? So I added that relationship into the customer to this one relationship into the container. So you might have noticed that, okay, I actually moved that relationship out of the flight booking system level to inside the home page, but still the diagram is actually showing up correctly to the right level. It doesn't go inside of that flight booking system, because inside that it's actually, if you see, it already understands that, okay, this containers actually sits inside the context of that particular system. But you can't see this home page where that goes, right? So for that we need to add this views. This is where the view comes in. The moment you actually add views into it, that is when you can actually reflect that changes in your diagrams. So now you can see that, okay, when I added that, it actually added a zoom in button, right? So the moment I click it, it actually now says that, okay, there is a flight booking system, there is a home page into it. So let's say that, okay, a user actually enters the searching term and it is going to search, right? So we have a search service or something like that. So we create another container, right? And this is just a backend system. Like, let's say that there is a team which is actually taking care of the search, right? Like, it doesn't need any UI or anything like that, or like it's just searching for it, and then we get the informations out of it, right? So let's say that, okay, it's a search service, and let's say this is a, I don't know, Kotlin. It's a backend system, Kotlin, and from home page, right? It comes to, right? So you can notice that, okay, I have uses these two different keywords over here. One is this and other is it. So both actually means that, okay, it is this context. It is like similar to what our coding languages which says that you don't need to use this or it over there. You can actually say that, okay, hey, homepage to search service, right? So it comes like that. So you can use it like that as well. But because I am inside the search service, I can use this it or this to define that, okay, whether what is the context of it. It understands that context and then it actually renders it. So now you can see that, okay, it actually, if you go back to over here, so there are two containers over there. It doesn't even though two containers are there, then you can actually define the system context about it. And once the system context has been defined, then you go in depth. You can see that, okay, home page and search service over there, right? So let's say this, okay, there are some more systems in it, right? Like, okay, in the search service may have two components. Let's say one component is search API, right? And this actually uses the technology as Kotlin, and another is searchdb. searchdb. Let's say this is actually, I don't know, MongoDB, right? So now you can see that still it is not coming up in the search service. You can see that, okay, it's only showing up homepage and search service. Our DB and search APIs are not shown over there. Again, we need to create a view to bring it into the view of this one, right? So give a unique name. This is the name, and then it will show the tell you the context of it. So that is why I said that, okay, search service view, which actually is defining this particular this container. And now you can see that, okay, there is a icon over here which actually clicks it, and then there you go, it actually comes up. But you can see that, okay, it doesn't comes any relationship over there. The reason is because I didn't add any relationship into this ones. I just said that, okay, homepage is actually comes over there, and homepage to say service, how it is going into this one, they don't like. So let's say that, okay, instead of that, it usually comes to the API, right? So now it actually added a little bit more context around it. So again, there are so many texts over there. Again, just having text, a lot of text, it will not help you to understand how it has been used, or like you need to read, like let's say for example, I said that, okay, it is actually using Kotlin and it is using MongoDB. This is where, like, see, for supports something called as icon. Like say for example, I can actually create an icon for Kotlin. Now you can see it in the picture. There is an icon which actually shows that it is using the Kotlin. The same thing over here. Let's say this is icon DB. There you go. So now let's say like we need to add little more like styles to it to understand, to visually represent it is a database, right? So and there is a relationship which we need to add from the search API to search DB, right? Search API to this.
Stores,
Yeah.
fetches.
Right? So we have that, and let's add some more styles to it to define that, okay, hey, it should look like a DB, right? So we can actually say that, okay, cylinder, now I don't know whether it is visible, it's actually changed the shape over here to a cylinder, right? So you can actually see what are the different types of things which actually comes over here. Like you can see that there is a queue. This now it has been changed to a queue. You can see that it is got updated over here as well, right, as a queue. So now, I mean, you can choose one of these storage is also same thing, cylinder and storage. And yeah, like whether it is a mobile, whether it is a browser. So person, rectangle, by default it is rectangle, right? So let's keep it as this one, right? So now this way you can slowly build the systems up, right? Now you can go in any depth you want, and still you can get the entire system. So now let's start from the beginning. You have a customer who comes into the flight booking systems, who comes to the booking, and we using the flight booking system, they books the flight for their journey. And you can see that, okay, inside the flight booking system there are two teams. One is actually home page, which is being managed by Adobe AEM, and the search service, which is the service which is having the entire searching for the flight is happening. So now you can see that, okay, hey, you have more information about it, right? Like, and you can actually see it doesn't need to be text like that. You can actually add notes on top of it and all those things. I'm not showing you folks over here, but I will show you another demo of that one. But you can actually add text to it so that I understand how it is working. And then you have a search service. You go in deep into the search service. Actually, from home page, it is actually coming to the search API, and from API, it actually serves from the DB. So this is how you can actually create a diagram, visually appealing diagram and interactive diagram. So now you have this application, so you can host it. You can host it anywhere, like in your, you can integrate with your own like pages or whatever it is. If it is host as an app, actually it can even show it in your Confluence or whatever it is. Then you have an interactive React diagram which you can actually create it for visually looking nice architecture diagrams. And the one of the best thing about this is like I can actually take it out from here, right? And now something went wrong because there is specification is not there, so I can actually add specification.c4 and then comes back to it. So you can actually extract these things into different this different files, right? If the more and more the diagrams comes in it, it gets complex, right? So you can actually extract these things out into different diagrams, and then you can use these things as like comes over there. The only thing which you need to keep in mind is that it is actually like JavaScript. Everything goes into one single file. So hoisting is something which is quite common over here. What does that mean is that, okay, I can't create another flight booking system in this workspace, right? Only one flight booking system can have over there. So for example, here search service, there is a search DB. I can actually create another search DB inside homepage, but because it is inside the home page, so it actually keeps it, you are able to do that, right? Like you can, in the context of that, it actually comes in that block. If it actually reads as like, okay, home.searchdb rather than calling it as a search db. So the levels, in which level you are defining also matters. So same way, if I actually try to create another in home page, it doesn't show, it doesn't create because it's already there. So these kind of validations are there. This kind of, okay, you know that, okay, it is actually going to be used in one place. You can actually use the dot notation to find out which blocks you are actually talking about. And then of course the styles are not like just like this, like you can change these styles like normal, how you will do it in the, right, like 10% opacity, right? So all those things you can actually do it, right, by changing these very simple things. It do support a lot of functionalities. I didn't show you many of those things, but let me show you one. I have created another diagram. Let me just open it up, which will help you to see the, right. So this is a little bit more it has the similar systems. There are some external systems which I created, and there are some more informations over here, like, okay, the icon and all those things which we already discussed about. And it has more of like, okay, the relationship between each components. And then there are some different types of views. So let's first see the diagram. So, right, so let's start from the beginning. It's a customer and there is a flight booking systems. So flight booking systems, you come over here, you can see that like a booking system, there is a browser. You can see that browser now shows us if like a browser over here because of the shape which I have used. And then you have home page. Then the home page is an external system. We consider as an AEM as an external system. So that is the thing which you can see from the notations as well. You can actually notate it, your diagrams, so that when you are in whichever pages, you can actually understand what those blocks means. It's an external system. That is why there is actually a gray area. And flight info services, you don't save the informations about the Indigo flights and Air India flights and all those things. And I've created a two external system, Air India systems and Indigo system. And then you have the info service, from where you have a listing page, flight API, flight DB, and then flight API actually calls this Air India system and Indigo system to enrich the information, right? Like exactly what point in time is the departure time and stuff like that. So we don't save it. We actually get it from the external systems. Let's assume like that. So you can see that, okay, this is the system view. Like you can actually explain all those things by just looking at all those flight API. Okay, there is an REST API, which is actually gonna go to the DB, find out all those things, and then you can actually talk to the external systems to enrich it. But again, there is a problem over here because you don't know exactly how this works, right? So that is where in like C4, there is a concept called as dynamic view. So you can think of this as a sequence diagram. So what it actually does is, you can create a view which actually with a title which says that okay, user journey for flight searching. And now I am actually saying that okay, how this entire system works in a user journey, right? So user comes to the navigate to the home page, then from home page he goes to the web, API and DB and all those things. So now if I start this, right, it says that okay, hey, user lands on the home page, it comes to the customer comes into the home page, which is the browser one. You can see that okay, now it goes to the navigate from the browser. He uses a browser to navigate to the home page. From the home page he enters the search query and click enter or whatever it is. So it comes to the flight listing page. So now from the flight listing page, it actually calls to load the flight listing page. You need to talk to API. You comes in the API, you search from the DB, you get all the informations from that. You can see that okay, all those text are there. You can add whatever you want. It is us who are creating the text. And now you are saying that okay, hey, it's actually you can see that it's a parallel call. So I want to optimize my architecture a little bit. I got all the flights and parallelly calling the Air India system and the Indigo systems over here. So it is actually parallelly happening. Fetch seats for all Air India systems and the Indigo systems. Once I have that, return all the infos, renders back to the browser. So I have created a user journey which talks about all these systems. Now I have everything integrated into a one single diagram, right? Like I have the C4 architecture of the entire systems. From there, I actually even discuss about how you can actually create, and inside the same view itself, I have created a user journeys as well. So now we can actually create multiple user journeys like that. Like say for example, I don't know, like someone else comes into another, maybe not instead of interested in the searching about it, maybe something a specific number is there, flight number is there, I want exactly that particular flight number. So that is a completely different user. So you may not even need to go to the DB to get more information about it. You directly fetch it from those APIs of those systems. So you can actually now create different user journeys to show that okay, how this entire system works. So this is where I'm gonna stop. So I will demo. I will give the different resources what you can actually use it. Um, right. So these are different the tools which we already discussed about it. All these tools which I actually showed over here are free, open source. You can use it for your own projects. And there is one more tool which I'm gonna just mention it. It is called as Ice Panel, which is actually a paid proprietary, which has a cloud for them. So you can actually do a cloud. I mean, inside the cloud itself, you can actually create these workspaces and stuff like that. These are actually, I showed it, okay, it's in your local, you need to do it and all those things. They have this web playground, then it is not really shareable and stuff like that. It is not that nice. Ice Panel has its own ways of doing it. And also, it also supports whatever like C4 supports. But the advantage of like C4 is that, okay, it is React and you have the control over how it needs to be done. Right, and also this like C4 is a very active project right now. It also supports the deployment diagrams. I don't know how many of you have actually done the deployment diagrams, created deployment diagrams. You can enrich that diagram to show where it is deployed. Okay, how many EC2 instances, or which I don't know, which AWS region you are being part of it. Whether you are using Kubernetes to store it, or it's a cloud SaaS software which you are using like AEM, right? So you can actually like create another deployment diagram which will come on top of your systems. So when you are creating a deployment diagram, you are not going to create a new diagram. You are going to reuse the elements which you have created, or the models which you have created. So you will be defining the same models over there in that diagram as well. So that way you can easily reuse things, and if somewhere you are doing a refactoring and changing your names of it, it will be visible in all the diagrams which has been created, right? So, and also one of the advantage of this Structurizr is that ADRs and stuff like that, documentation, you can create ADRs and you can have this part of the Structurizr itself. Like C4 is also working on creating ADR support for ADRs and stuff like that in their ecosystems. So in future you will be able to just create a doc and inside this project, and then from the document itself you can actually show these diagrams as well. And already, as I said, it supports in the CLI, and all these things which you have seen, you can actually export into multiple PNGs. If you want JPEGs and PNGs, you can just create a CLI and then it will give you different diagrams out of it. Thank you. That's it from my side. Any questions? Sure.
So, can we export in addition to PNG to GIF or MP4?
Yes, you can. Like
Okay.
it supports many. I'm if you are talking about like C4, I think it
Like
supports
C4,
like
like C4, yeah.
WebP. I think WebP, PNG, and JPEG. I'm sure. I'm not so sure about the GIF. The GIF which you
Yeah,
saw over here, I actually created it
you
using
created
the
it.
screen recording. I
Okay.
don't remember like because like C4 is actually a very active project, so they keep on adding new
Okay,
features
sure,
to it.
sure, sure.
So I
I'll check
I'm
it
not
out.
so
Yeah,
sure about it. You
yeah,
can check it on the website.
yeah.
So I
Thank you.
think 4 or 5 different formats they supports.
Okay, okay, sure.
Yeah. How do you ensure that these diagrams don't go outdated? As in, you have to keep it synced with the code and everything that you were saying in the beginning, right?
Yes, exactly. Good question. So the one of the practice which we have done in our projects is like, okay, we don't run it as a part of other projects. We actually like keep it next to the projects which you are part of. So for example, you can do different ways. It's up to you to define. Like at the end of the day, like this entire diagram. Say let's say that okay, you are actually a part of components, right? Like a component container team, right? Like a first flight search. You will only host that flight search things, right? And then you define that, and then you can actually extract it out, and then be part of a CI/CD pipeline. You can actually export it into the big project, and then you can actually do that. So basically, keep it close to your code, right? Like even the PlantUML, keep it close to your code, and then whenever the stories or the work when you're gonna do that, when you are making a changes to it, just add a Jira item to it, saying that okay, hey, as a task item, right, or like a list item, saying, does it change our architecture? So if you do pair programming, of course, you can actually know that okay, hey, you can remind yourself your pair that okay, you are updating it of not a PR, just a checklist item. And so that make sure that okay, you are updating this code as well, the diagrams as well as part of the code changes. So it is easier, much easier when you're doing that very close to the story itself rather than keeping it as a separate. And this because it supports the same. It doesn't support IntelliJ like C4 right now, but they are working on it to support a plugin over there. So it is in your dev environment, Visual Studio Code. If you're using it, you can keep it close to your code itself.
So can you have multiple files, as in, let's say,
Yes, you can.
okay, it's in different repositories.
And that is why I said like it is up to you to decide like that. The way how we did it in docs, for example, the docs, right? Like we each teams actually has its own docs. So what we did for even for docs is like there is a process which actually extract it out from the docs directory. We know that okay, this is as a organization, this is a convention which we are going to follow in our repos. There is a doc directory. Inside the doc, there will be many diagrams or whatever it is. We scrape all the docs directory from each of the repos in our organization and then create in a single docs application which actually deploys it. So it is your team's responsibility to keep that docs up to date, and we will take the enablement team or someone who actually scrape that. We scrape all the people's docs directories and then put it in a single place and then create this website ourselves. So we have done like that. So it is up to how big the organization is. If it's a very small team, you may not need to do it, but these are the techniques which you can actually use it. Okay. Right? And then if you are making a changes, you can actually have another pipeline which actually scraping it, right? Like so another pipeline async to whatever you are doing it, so you can actually drive that behaviors as well. So that the document keep updating it.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Cool, awesome. Thank you very much.